With this fourth and final painting of the American series, I was really concentrating on aerial perspective, but especially on the barn. That's where it'll be most apparent, so that's where I'll put most of my attention and most of the effort. Let's see how I go. I have to say, I do love a good vista. There's nothing like having the couple of miles, kilometres of depth to be able to portray distance. I'm probably what's known as a downhill painter, and that is the aerial perspective, not so much an uphill or on flat ground sort of painter, even though I've tried or aimed to extend my repertoire, say, into interiors, of course, still life, some figurative work, boats, bridges, urban scenes, city scenes. So I've thankfully added to my repertoire, but this scene is actually very reminiscent of the type of subjects that I would paint in my first sort of 10 to 15 years. And except for the shape of the barn or the shed, as I would have called it, I used to have a lot of barns or houses with red roofs, and so it does feel a little bit of deja vu, but that's the beauty of developing a repertoire, and I think as an artist that's I think it does really come back to being an artist, not someone who's just producing oil paintings or watercolours or drawings, just a mass of paintings or product or work that is all similar, and it almost becomes then a bit of a recipe. So now I'm getting into the fun parts. I do love getting that snow in. You may have just noticed that I just used a slightly rolled technique. I find the beauty with that is I'll get some random brush mark effects instead of just that layering on, almost like putting icing on a cake. It does give me a little bit more nuance and a lovely little bit of variety. And I quite often, and I do get the question quite often, why do I leave the sky out and why do I put it in so late? And actually that's perfectly on cue. And there's normally two reasons. One, it's sometimes dangerous to put it, I find, to put it in too soon because I don't know the exact value. But also, if my brush is dirty from the greens or the reds, it will make this mix too muddy, too grey, and that will give the overall painting a almost overcast, muddy, dirty sort of feel. So I've got to really get that sky value, colour, temperature just right, or as accurate as possible. And I think because this scene is semi-familiar, not the location, but the type of subject, I'm really able to work with quite a bit of confidence and a surety that I'm not having to go back in and adjust and correct things too much. Of course, that's perfectly fine if I have to or if you have to. And that is the great beauty of oil paint, is that it is a versatile, flexible medium, so it really does have those attributes for us all to work with. But the other thing is, because I actually don't paint too many of these scenes, it was fun to go back in and just realise, you know what, I've got so many more new ways to visually tell this story, to bring to this type of subject. And it was something that actually surprised me a little. So where the red barn, the main barn is, I've brought in a little bit of light and foliage to go up against where that shadow is, the shadow end, where normally I would just bring the foliage through all the same value, but that was just a lovely little subtle nuance that I noticed in the reference material that you know what, that's another little visual way or visual idea how to create a little bit more depth. And that's what it does. Instead of it being value, shadow, I've got a little bit of light there. So it's just creating, it might only be another 30 or 40 yards, but that's what we're always trying to do. Because when you think, if it was a still life, we've normally barely got 1 foot, 10, maybe 16 inches of depth, where this I've probably got 1 to 2 miles or 2 to 3 kilometres. But I've broken him down into that backdrop, mid-distance and foreground, and the little, and I think it's called a Piedmont, it's the area at the foothills of a mountain. And in this case, it's a fairly big Piedmont. It's almost more like that hill, that yellowy ochre hill. It was very tempting to really put a whole heap of detail, maybe a house and some cows and shrubs and escarpments. But I thought, you know what, with that foreground and mid-distance, because that is so dynamic, it won't hurt to have a little area of peace. And I think that's what most paintings, good paintings and well-executed paintings do have, an area of where the eye can rest a little. Because it is a little bit like being in a conversation with someone and someone just talking all the time. That little pause is always perfect. So, and that's what those little nuances, I feel, do, those little quiet areas. So don't feel as if we have to fill up every area. And with that being said, we do have to make sure we nail those focal points. See where are the house, the tree in the foreground, the snow cap. We've got to get them right, and then everything tends to fall into place nicely. With every painting, I'll always sort of go through a period of absolutely loving the painting, being sort of uncertain, and I think that's the juxtapose of being an artist. We have to ride that sort of roller coaster. But I want to show you a really great little trick. If you come on in with a focal area, if you put your hand in front of it, the painting should almost fall apart. And then by removing your hand, it then should come into focus and we should get that pop, that finished look. So if you're unsure if your focal point has worked in a scene, that's a great little trick to do. So hope you enjoyed that one. That was a really great, fun scene to paint. All the best. Bye for now.